Okay, hey everybody, Kristen Craren here. You're probably used to seeing my face on this feed. Of course, we're with Therapy Practice University if you're catching this on YouTube. I have Dr. Catone here to talk about ethics with us about in regards to technology and your practice. But first, I'd like to have him introduce himself, his licensure, and his background, and how he is qualified to even talk about this topic.
Great. Kristen, thank you for allowing me to do this. My name is R. Rocco Catone. I'm a professor at the University of Missouri in St. Louis. I've been here 30 years. And I've written a textbook on ethics that's in its 4th edition, and it's called Ethics in Decision Making and Counseling and Psychotherapy. It's a Springer publication, and I'm very proud of the book. It's going to be revised. I have served on the ACA Ethics Rewrite Committee, the 2005 code, and I have also served on 2 rehabilitation counseling codes of ethics rewrite committees. So I have some experience with code rewriting, and hopefully will offer you something from that experience. In terms of technology, we're going to talk about a few things, right, Kristen?
Yeah, I've come across a lot of questions about the use of an online note-taking and calendar system. My partner Nicole and I just did a presentation with the American Counseling Association of Missouri, and a little bit of what we talked about is efficiency and delegation. And I regularly hear from people from that group and also from my travels talking to other therapists like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can trust this technology. I'm afraid somebody's going to get my information. I don't think it's ethical. And so I wanted to put their minds at ease and help them understand a little bit about the technology and how it is ethical and how it can benefit their practice. And I'm sure we'll talk about some other things too in regards to ethics and practice.
Well, I think, gosh, over my career, technology has changed practice dramatically.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't have computers when I first started practicing. So
you didn't have licenses when you first started practicing.
That's right. We didn't have licenses.
Pioneered that.
Yes. Yeah. And I was involved in that. Yes. But, once we got computers, we had the old really floppy disks. I don't know if people even understand when I talk about a floppy disk, because they were floppy in the original Apple computers. And then we kind of moved to CD-ROMs, and we thought it was a big jump when we went to flash drives, and that was a really big change for us. Practicing most recently, I would have a flash drive or an external hard drive on a computer, and the general rule, I think, around anything related to technology is a double password protection. So you want to make sure your laptop is password protected, and then if you do use a flash drive or an external hard drive.
I have a couple of friends that are they own technology companies, and they can actually provide computers that have an actual key that goes in the side.
Yeah.
Unlock it. But also fingerprint passwording is very common.
Definitely, yeah. You want to double password protect anything, and now we've moved past flash drives and external hard drives, and we're doing cloud storage. And I think that these electronic management suites, as they're sometimes called, or electronic management systems, I mean, that's where it's happening now, and there are good programs out there that are inexpensive. You're talking about $50 for a solo practice, a small practice.
I'm paying $35 with simple practice.
Right.
And it's super easy, and it makes my clients' lives easier too, because they don't have to print anything out.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. So everything's stored on the cloud. And one of the things I would say to people is to make sure that when you choose one of these electronic management systems, if you choose one that's going to be around a while, the worst thing that can happen is that they go defunct. So you want to go with a well-established one one that has cloud computing that's well recognized. And so, I mean, what is cloud computing? Like people say, what is the cloud? There is no cloud. It simply is a place where there are large mainframe computers or servers that store a lot of information. I saw a picture of the cloud. IBM was developing a cloud for Thailand, the country of Thailand.
Oh my gosh.
And it was a gigantic building, and it had all these IBM mainframes, and the building was secured, like a vault. It had extra controls for environmental issues, and so here it was these big computers. That's the cloud, and information is accessible through the internet, and it's stored in these large mainframes or any kind of server that that the provider has access to.
It sounds like the physical cloud is safe inside the building, but clinicians often worry that somebody's going to hack into this information. In my opinion, I don't think anybody would want this counseling information, but they're so worried that what if there's a breach, then what?
Well, I mean, the electronic management system should be very protected. They should have firewalls, and they should have ways of protecting your information. But the other thing is, most practitioners have websites, and when you get a website, you want to make sure that you have a secure website. So for instance, there's HTTP and there's an HTTPS websites, and you want to make sure you get the HTTPS websites. Those are secured websites, and they do allow for another level of protection of information. Any email should be through a site that's a protected site, because it offers a level of protection that an unprotected site does not.
Do you know off the top of your head what email services are HIPAA protected?
I can't answer in terms of actual services, but I think that if you have your own site, you probably should. If you have a protected site, that those emails can be encrypted and protected. And so you would want to use, when you use something officially for your practice, you would want to use that protected email. You don't want to just do it on your Yahoo or Gmail or other account. You want to make sure that you're doing it in an account that is provided by a website that's protected.
And that's super important because it's become so commonplace for clients to email whoever they want to talk to. Of course, texting is never going to be HIPAA protected, I don't think. But
no, and we really shouldn't use text for communication of anything that's private information. I mean, other than perhaps for scheduling or giving a phone number out to call. I think you have to really limit what you do through texting, and use your official email that's a secure, encrypted email if possible.
So with all this technological advancement, these companies have found ways to protect this information in a way that the client information is behind actually more locked doors than what's required.
Yeah, you want at least 2 locked doors. That would be a minimum from an ethics standpoint. And I mean, if you have more than that, if you have other ways of protecting information, all the better. I mean, in the old days, that meant you put the file in a cabinet and you lock the cabinet and then you lock the door to your office. But now it's about locking your computer somehow, whether it's a laptop or otherwise, and then making sure that access to the sites that you use are locked or protected by password.
There's your 2.
There's your 2.
Yeah. So what other ethical issues do you talk to your students about at UMSL that come up?
Well, I think just in terms of practicing at a distance, because electronic practice is allowing us now to see clients from anywhere. And I think that the general rule is that you have to have a license wherever the client is located. You can't just willy-nilly start practicing. You open an office in St. Louis, Missouri, and then you start doing counseling with people in Nebraska. The licensure laws are in those states to protect the citizens of those states. And so a person who wants to do distance counseling would have to have a license in the state where the client is located. I have 2 state licenses, Arizona and Missouri. I could do distance counseling in those states. I guess if people want to do distance counseling for a living, that you probably would need to get licenses in states that you would target for.
Yeah, I was just talking to a clinician in this group about how she's going to make that one of her goals, is to get licenses in multiple states so that her niche can actually be remote counseling.
Right. And then the other thing is making sure that you have access. I mean, I think we have to be very careful in emergencies. You know, we have emergency call lines here in St. Louis. I have a number of students that work at those call lines. They have access to the police through a system of contacts, no matter where the person's calling from. And they can contact emergency services at the push of a button.
What's the name of that company?
Well, there's two of them here in St. Louis. There's Provident Counseling, and there's Behavioral Health Response.
Okay.
Both of those do that kind of work. Provident does national work like this.
Okay.
So if there's an emergency on the line, they can immediately get a hold of the police through another contact. And that's the kind of thing that a counselor has to be alert to. If you're working at a distance, you have to be able to access those emergency services if somebody makes a threat, or if they're suicidal, or, you know, self-harming. So I think we have to be very alert to that and have access to those emergency services. You know, for instance, in Missouri, I've lived and worked all around Missouri, so I feel very comfortable if I had a client in, say, Joplin, Missouri. I'm located in St. Louis, that I would know who to call or who to get a hold of. And that's the kind of thing I think you have to have some understanding of the territory.
It sounds like the community, the culture is growing with the technology. We have more technology and more access to clients across the country if we're licensed properly. We have these online note-taking systems, and our communities are responding to this and putting all these other things in place to support it.
Yes, yes. And, you know, I think a conscientious practitioner is going to be alert to all of that sort of stuff. And once it's in place, it makes life very easy. You know, once you have your electronic suite, and once you know the territory well enough to know emergency services, that's, you know, once you figure that out, you have that almost forever. And so, you know, then practice becomes the focus, and you focus on client needs and do your very best to address their issues.
Well, I encourage everybody who is still using paper to use some sort of online program. I really like Simple Practice because they're so responsive. When I have a question, they have this Facebook group that you can go in, and you're like, oh, I'm having this problem with the program. Hey, who knows how to fix this? And Simple Practice themselves will respond, but also fellow clinicians will say, hey, you know, like, do this thing, or this is what's going on. Give you some.
Is that who provides your service?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I suggest them all the time, just because it's so easy to get your questions answered, and you can tell that they're always trying to change the program and update it to make it the best it can be. And if they change something and it doesn't really work, then they change it back, or they make it better, and that's pretty cool. So. Anyway, well, thanks, Dr. Catone, for sharing that information with us. It's been a
pleasure. Yeah.
I really appreciate it, and you're one of my favorite people.
Oh, thank you, Kristen.
Of course you know that.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Okay.